Welcome back to CPS Web Tips. I'm Connor, and in this video, we're going to create a script using Automate Studio to streamline the CS01 transaction within SAP, which is also the transaction that's used to create bill of materials within SAP. We'll also incorporate how to loop in your script, as well as switch your playback mode for different methods of troubleshooting. For more, here's Francis.
Hello, welcome to another CPS Web Tips video. The topic of today is utilizing Automate Studio to record a bill of materials create transaction, CS01. During this recording, what we're going to do is we're going to walk through recording a transaction, mapping of the Excel data, and at the end try to upload maybe multiple BOMs into SAP. The reason we're going to be using transaction in this case is because even on S/4HANA, CS01 does not always have a simple BAPI alternative for all scenarios, especially when you're dealing with complex BOM structures. So before we actually get to the point where we are going to be running the transaction in Studio, what we're going to do is we want to walk through this transaction really quick in SAP to make sure we're familiar with the steps that we want to walk. This will save us redundant efforts while recording. So I have a open CS01. I have a material number. I'm going to leave that information there because it's the one that I want to work with. The plant number, the BOM usage, and of course the valid data I'm going to leave as default. And then hit enter to get into the next screen. It gives me a warning message because I've used this material for BOMs when I was testing earlier. So I'm going to ignore that and hit enter. As you can see, we're going to be, when we link it, the components for this material, we're dealing with a grid in which we need to be able to put data in multiple rows. We know that for sure we're going to have to put data on the first row, but we don't know how many rows of data we're going to need for every single BOM in the future. So we have to record this in a way where we, instead of manually entering every single row, we tell the transaction to move on to the next one. One of the first things we want to do is test that theory. So we enter a component. I enter a quantity. I'm going to do a unit of measure and hit enter. And then I'm going to do the second row, which is the normal way that a standard user would do this directly in SAP. Get another component. Enter it at the quantity and the unit of measure. Hit enter and it does that. Okay, and now I'm going to try to see the new entries route because I don't have a new row. I believe new entries probably is going to be able to get me to the next line. Hit new entry and it does. It moves me to the next row. So it is behaving the way I want it. I have enough to feel confident on what I'm going to do when I do my recording. So I'm going to exit instead of saving. Cancel. I'm not going to record, save it. And then we're going to switch over to Studio. In Studio, as mentioned, we're going to go with the transaction mode or option of recording. Let it do its thing. It's asking me to connect to SAP. I already have a logon saved, so I'm going to use that. Now that I'm connected to SAP, put in the transaction. On recording modes, it's set by default to standard. You have the standard mode, the batch input mode, and the GUI scripted mode of recording. If you're going to use the transaction within an evolve form, do not recommend you in the GUI scripted mode because GUI scripted mode scripts do not work with evolve forms. We're going to leave it with the standard mode. I do have the option to auto map, meaning that after I'm done recording, it will fill up the Excel template with the columns in the inputs that I used. In this case, I want to do it manually, so I'm going to leave that unchecked and select start recording. And now, as you can see, it opened up the SAP GUI. I'm going to type in my information for my recording, enter my material number. Now I'm going to do the plant. Set the BOM usage to 1. I'm not going to change the valid form date, so I'm going to leave that. I have the warning message. Now, we're always going to enter the first component, and then the components after that, that's where we're going to do the loop. So the idea is the first component we're going to enter, and then any components after that will be part of a loop where we do new entries. So right now I enter my information, enter my component, enter my quantity, enter my unit of measure for that component, hit enter. And now the transaction's acting a little bit different while we're doing the recording through Studio. In this case, if there's any information on this screen that you will want to add, you can go ahead and do so. I do not want to add anything else, but I might want to add some text items. So I'm going to hit enter. And then I'm going to do something in line 1 and line 2 of the item text. So I'm going to say store, there goes their allocation 1. Then maybe something in line 2. Hit enter one more time. And then do new entries. Enter, record my second row so you can capture that. It's quantity. Enter. That's the same thing. Enter again. I'm going to do line 1 test. Then do line 2 test. That way I have it stored. Hit enter. And I think I have enough to record my BOM. I'm going to hit save. Let it do its thing. It has the fields that I interacted with. It remembers that. The template itself, the Excel template itself, is blank because I'm going to manually map those things out. So one of the first things I want to do is I want to bring in my log field. I'm going to put it in the first column just so that it's easy for me to see, and it's the first thing I see in terms of the direction. As I mentioned earlier, we are going to have to create a loop that goes through more than one material component when we have more than one. So for that, we will be utilizing basically a column helper that helps the transaction know which ones are part of the loop and what's the header, what's the subheader line. So in this case, we're going to leave column B for that helper column. You'll see more when I get into it. Now I'm going to start mapping the rest of my inputs. My unit of measure, my line item 2, text line item 2. And then as you notice, this is where we start repeating. So we're going to map them to the same columns. Actually, I mapped it wrong, so we can fix that right now. It should have been mapping to material number, plant, biomes. It should have been mapping to column F. So map it to column F. This one also goes in column F. It's okay. This is teaching us to troubleshoot at the same time and correct. So I have right here, okay, BOM component, making sure I'm lining up my columns. Okay, doing a review. Material number, plant usage, category, everything looks like it's aligned. Right now, if you notice, it's showing in color purple, and also right here on the mapping is showing with the cloud and the drop down. That means that it is right, the sign right now or set up to download data from SAP. What we want to do is we want to send data to SAP. So we're going to switch to upload. If we wanted to hard code any values, we would just do the fixed value data, but we're sending all that. Just wanted to bring in that as a tip. Again, now we have the cloud with the arrow going up, the color right here switched to blue, and you hover over it, it says that we're uploading data from Excel to SAP. And as a recap, you could hard code values, means set a value that you never change and you're not going to bring in or you're not going to send. You are going to send it to SAP, but it's always going to be the same value. Or again, we are showing right now we're sending data from Excel to SAP, so we want that. If we wanted to bring data back down from SAP onto the Excel template, we would do a download from SAP. This will be a good case would be, let's say that you want to create an if statement in your recording where you first bring a value from SAP, and based on that value you determine the next steps. It would be a good combination of doing a download from SAP. Or if you want to use what we called a transaction read, where you record the transaction, but instead of sending the data, you're bringing back that information from that specific transaction. As you know, we left column B open. We have to do our loops. So then now we go to the expert view to be able to create our loop. This is where we're going to be able to do the more complex stuff. As you notice right here, it's you see the screen views, you see the OK codes, and it's a little bit longer view. So that's why I like to do my mapping first and then do more the details here. We can see the header information, and then from right here we can see that this references the first line on the grid. That's why I say 01. So this is where we enter our information on the first line on the BOM components grid. This is when we hit enter. This is where we enter line 2, line 1, line 2, and hit enter. And then this is where we select the button to do the next line. So this is basically where we're going to start doing our loop. In order to do a loop, I'm going to highlight those fields, do a shift all the way down to my next line 2, and then put a loop around it. Again, by default, Evolve or Automate Studio, it's going to set the last column, the last available column, as your column for your loop identifier or your loop helper field. I'm going to use column B. And now it's filled in, basically saying that, and you see in the loop, while column B is equal to D, do the loop. So now right now it's only going to do the loop once. If I have multiple rows and label them D, then it's going to do that loop multiple times. So now that I have it set up, let's go ahead and start testing it to see if it works, and do some cleanup, this extra L from when I was messing with it. Okay, let me do some realignment of columns so that it would be easy for me to see everything in one view without having to move the tabs around. Okay, and I'm going to copy some of this information because I still want it for my first row. So in here, I'm going to just change the component. Since some of this information is the same, want to change that. Maybe you want to do more to make sure we test that the loop actually does more than just the second row. So let's do this, label those iterations, and then put in different components. Okay, so now I have a BOM that will have 4 components. I'll do this. And then hit test to execute it. It's going to ask me to give the data template, the Excel template, a name. Also, if it already is defaulting to a location, I could change the location where it will be saved. It also is doing the same thing for the script file, allowing me to give me the option to change the script name and the location of where I'm sending it. I'm not going to do anything with that. I'm going to leave it as default and hit save. And then it's going to try to execute. Hopefully it will execute correctly, and if it fails, we'll use that opportunity to troubleshoot. Okay, so in this case, let's go into debug mode and see what happened. Based on the error, I have an idea what it is. Maybe one of my components that I put in was not the right category. So let's go in debug mode and walk through it to see what happened. Okay, in debug mode, basically it shows you the steps that it's trying to do. That looks correct. That looks correct. It did the first one. It did that enter. It put in the lines. So far, so good. It tries to go to the next line. So far, so good there too. Great there too. Great there too. Oh, now I'm actually what happened here is that I am missing, instead of going here, it missed an extra OK code and it failed right there. So let's try to exit out of here. Don't save, and let's see if maybe there's a possibility where I'm missing an OK code on my loop. Going back to my mapping. Let's see what happens if I just go switch the mode to non-batch with SAP controls and try to run it again. Okay, let's do it again. So it did not like that. So it was not the recording mode. There's a step that I'm missing. Go back to my mapping. Leave that recording. And then what am I missing here? Let's see, maybe it's just the alignment of my loop. Let's try that again. Yep, that's what it was. It was just the alignment of my loop. So you got to see me troubleshooting my script, playing around with seeing if maybe it was the screens. If what I did right now is that at first I tried to change the recording mode to see if maybe this, when it, especially with the BOMs, that's something that happens. You can, the way the transaction behaves when you go directly to SAP could be different than the way the transaction behaves when you're recording, and then it could also be different whenever you execute the script, that the transaction behaves or the screens behave differently once the script is running. So in those cases, that's when you work with the recording mode to see if any of that fixes it. When I noticed that that did not work, what I did is next look into my loop and try to figure out if I'm accidentally not including a line that I need. So what I did is let's just try and include the whole section and not just the OK code line. And that seems to have fixed it. I ran it, it works. Now that I proved that it works with one, let me go ahead and clear this out, and let's go ahead and execute this for multiple. So repeat the same concept for multiple BOMs. So let's do 12, 13, 14. Again, this is one BOM, this is another BOM, and this is another BOM. So now we have 3 BOMs. Remember, you have to follow the same pattern. The header starts with an H. The rows on the additional rows going after the first row will have to be marked with a D on column B. And then you just basically rinse and repeat. I'm going to try to execute it. And hopefully it's successful. Since we tested it with one, now we can test with multiple. Great. We're seeing the successful messages. Now we saw that the script is working successfully. Now, what you can do with it is multiple things. Now that you have a script that you prove that it worked with one set, and then you basically replicated it and tested that it works with multiple materials, that you can create multiple BOMs, then now you know you have a working script. As you saw, there was, in addition to the error messages that I got, there's other things that could cause issues, like entering invalid numbers or missing planned assignments, or you're missing authorizations, or you're including something like the wrong item category or the wrong unit measure. There's multiple things that could make the transaction fail. So you want to look at both the data that you're sending and the way you recorded it. Once you have your script working, as I mentioned, you can do multiple things with it. You can you can save it and promote it to evolve and have it as a standalone script to utilize on mass uploads. You could also add an approvals to it and create an Excel workflow, or you can convert it into an XML format and then import it into an evolve form to allow users to use the web form, the evolve web forms, to generate BOMs. I think we have covered everything we needed to cover. So as a quick recap, what we have walked through is that we have shown you how to record a BOM, shown you how to do some basic troubleshooting of the recording, shown you how to do the loops within the BOM, and also executed the transaction not just for one BOM, but for multiple BOMs. You can use the same recording approach for other types of transactions, such as journal entries, vendor creates, material updates, and many other SAP processes. I hope that you found this video useful. I hope that you found the material helpful. Have a great day. Thank you for joining us. If you have any questions or concerns, feel free to reach out to us and let us know if there's something we can do to help you out or if you have any questions. Thank you very much. Have a great day.